Assalamu alaikum, sisters. It's great to be here again at HHUGS. I've spoken at the last two HHUGS events in London, and mashallah, they're very inspiring and also wake you up to what our Muslim sisters are going through today. So please support HHUGS. So my name is Maz Saleem. That's short for Maz Saleem, but as some people can't pronounce that, I abbreviate it to Maz. So I'm the very proud daughter of Pakistani immigrants. I'm an anti-racism, anti-war campaigner, and I'm also was one of the organisers of the big Trump demo that had 250,000 people, which was together against Trump, just recently when Donald Trump had the audacity to step his horrid feet on UK soil. So we had 250,000 people in Trafalgar Square protesting this racist Islamophobe coming into this country. But most importantly, I'm the daughter of Haji Maz Saleem, who was brutally murdered by neo-Nazi terrorist and mosque bomber Pavlo Lapshin. Now, I'm here today to talk about my personal experience of Islamophobia. I'm also here to address and challenge the racist narrative being pushed out by the British media, the far right and politicians in the UK. And I'll be also addressing how we can be more active as Muslim women. Now, I was interviewed last week by ex-Tory Baroness Sayeeda Warsi for BBC Radio 4 last week, and she asked me, what does it mean to be a Muslim woman today? And I said to her that for me personally, and I think for most of us, it's to be very strong in the face of adversity, to be challenged most days of your life, not only by the right wing, not only by the far right fascists, but by our own communities as well. It means to deal with misogynistic views and behaviour regularly, but most of all, it means to keep your faith in Allah, as He is the best of planners. I will always stand up for the oppressed, whether it's popular or not, and have been rebelling against an unjust system, have made rebelling against an unjust system a lifelong goal. Now, Pakistan was born out of the embers of the British Empire that produced colonialism and ethnic cleansing. And because of the UK policy of divide and rule, and because of the British Empire, my father came to Britain in 1957, just like the Windrush generation. World War II ended in 1945, and my father came to the UK to rebuild the country and settled in Birmingham, as you can tell with my very posh, Brummy Pakistani accent. So war, imperialism, fascism and racism are the breeding ground for discrimination and hatred, which the UK government is complicit in. Now, my personal experience of Islamophobia would live with me and my family for the rest of our lives, and remind us what happens when hatred in society goes unchallenged and people who hate are not stopped. On the 29th of April 2013, my beautiful father, Mohammed Saleem, was singled out and murdered on the road we lived on for over 30 years. The motive for his death was because he was brown and dressed like a Muslim. He was followed from the mosque after Isha Namaz. It was about 10 p.m. by a Ukrainian neo-Nazi terrorist who'd only been in the country for less than a week. He followed my father home and then brutally stabbed him from behind 3 times. Now, my father was educated and very political, especially when it came to Pakistani politics. He eventually worked as a baker, but when he actually came here, he was working at Aston Steelworks in Birmingham. He was a trade unionist. There are millions like my father, Irish, Russian, Jewish, Eastern European, who have all come here to work and seek a better life for their families. My father worked extremely hard. He did double and triple shifts at the bakery to feed his family. He gave more than he ever received. Racism has always played the role of dividing people, and we should oppose it, because this country has been nourished and built by immigrants, and we should never, ever forget that. Now, Pavlo Lapshin was known for his racist neo-Nazi activity in Ukraine, so he was given a ward placement from the British Embassy in Ukraine to Small-Leaf, an area populated by Muslims. And as soon as he entered the country, he embarked on a campaign of terror and murder. So the British Embassy in Ukraine supported his application to come to the UK. He had his hands on a hunting knife within 5 days of entering Britain, and he stabbed my father to death. He then went on a bombing campaign and put 3 bombs outside 3 masjids, 3 mosques in the West Midlands, and these bombs were nail bombs that were put outside Tipton, Masjid, Wolverhampton and Warsaw. And they were nail bombs, so he made these nail bombs, and because of the timing, because it was Ramadan, there was no one at the masjid at the time, but they went off and they did, there was a lot of shrapnel, windows were broken, but the way the West Midlands police dealt with this was completely appalling. I mean, they even arrested an 82-year-old worshipper for one of the bombs in Wolverhampton because they couldn't be asked to investigate it properly. Now, why, knowing his history as a fascist, did the British Embassy in Ukraine support his application to come to the UK as an intern in a Muslim area? Surely these facts merited a closer look from the government in exactly the same way as they spent time, energy and resources in investigating the murder of Lee Rigby, rest in peace. Theresa May is screening Muslims coming in and out of the country with the counter-terrorism bill. I want to know how Nazis are let through and sponsored by the state. Also, like recently on June the 5th, there was a big Tommy Robinson demo in London, which was appalling. There was thousands of Nazis marching, and they allowed Geert Wilders, who's a Dutch fascist who runs the Freedom Party, to come to the UK. So a known fascist who runs a fascist organisation was allowed to come to the UK and preach his hatred, and what he preached was absolutely despicable. A sister recorded the speeches, and this is hate speech. So what is Theresa May doing about this? It seems like Nazis are just allowed in and Muslims are constantly spied on. Now, Lapshin is serving 40 years for my father's murder and for the 3 mosque bombings in the West Midlands. These are all acts of terrorism. He was charged under terrorism law, yet to this day, the media, the police and the government have not treated Pablo as they would if the terrorist was an alleged Muslim. When Lee Rigby was murdered 3 weeks after my father, his murder received global news coverage and cries of protest, but my father's brutal murder on the streets of the UK in a similar attack received comparatively little attention. Instead of loud and heartfelt condemnations from politicians and the police, instead of hashtags and long discussions about the dangers of neo-Nazi beliefs in our society, there was a deafening silence. And Muslim alleged terrorists, on the other hand, will certainly have led to conversations about the dangers of radical Islamism. So let me make this clear. Lapshin caused 90 days of terror in Birmingham. This was one of the biggest acts of terrorism in the UK, yet today, the BBC failed to mention it whenever there's an act of terrorism. They always exclude Dad's case. He was charged under terrorism law. You know, recently I've been going back and forth with the BBC saying, how can you do that? He's charged under terrorism law. He's a terrorist. He planted bombs. And they were like, well, it's a far-right attack and Lee Rigby is an Islamist terrorist attack. I mean, come on. This only looks like only Muslims are terrorists. And, you know, still the arguments going back and forth. And they just did a recent list of UK terror attacks in UK soil and excluded Dad's attack, terrorist attack on that. Also, the police at the time were reluctant to call this a hate crime. They came to our house, you know, they investigated every other motive, but hate crime, the most obvious possible motive, and this wasn't initially investigated. They came to our house, and I remember they came to our house and they said, and you know, luckily it wasn't, my mum wasn't just in because obviously her English isn't that great. They were like, this is not a racist attack, we're going to tell you what it is. We said, we're going to tell you what it is. We've lived here all our lives. We know this community very well. We know this is a racist attack. Because this is what West Midlands Police Force are renowned for doing. I mean, they've got a really bad record when it comes to racism. So when we confronted West Midlands Police about our concerns with the investigation, we were shocked to discover they were not even considering hate crime as a possible motive. Dad was a practicing Muslim and he enjoyed the serenity he found in his faith. It encompassed how he lived his life. Dad was keen to advocate education. He'd often say there's no point in being a Muslim if one did not educate oneself, because without good prospects, a person could not fully support their family. But the way we were treated by West Midlands Police demonstrated that not enough has changed since the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. The suspicions of the police, the surveillance we had placed on us, and the coroner's failings in the judicial process left us with a very bitter taste. Much more needs to be done to address these failings. We found the police complaints process disorganised and confusing. Our complaints were ignored by the IPCEC and the time limits to responses were not met. You know, Dad's body was kept in the mortuary for months, for about 3 months, and we went to 7 inquests. So while we were traumatised not only with our father, we were fighting and challenging the police force. We had 7 inquests. The coroner played the role of God. Like, you can have the body, no, you can't have the body. And then he went on a 2-week holiday. Do you know how bad Islamically this is, you know? So it was excruciating times, and we wished that on no one. And this is why I continue to campaign, because we need to challenge the Islamophobia that Muslims are enduring today. Now, 5 years on since Dad's brutal terrorist murder, Islamophobia is burning through the world right now. And since my father's passing, I've been an active campaigner on racism and Islamophobia, standing up to both on a daily basis and speaking and writing on many high-profile platforms. But no platform is as high-profile as those offered to our Prime Minister, Theresa May. Her rise of position to Prime Minister is hardly a cause for celebration if you're a British Muslim. She has used Islamophobia and an anti-refugee stance to get where she is today. Anti-Muslim rhetoric and bigotry have been the main factor for the so-called war on terror. For over 17 years, the demonization of Muslims and Islam has been used to its full extent by the US and UK mainstream media to justify the bombings of Muslim countries. An entire so-called war on terror industry was built on the back of September the 11th in the form of police militarization, surveillance and rendition. Western wars have killed over 4 million Muslims since 1990. Bush and Blair have blood on their hands. They're the biggest terrorists out there, and they should be tried at The Hague. But they lied and took us to war, and they're still free and still out there. Now, Islamophobia needs to stop, and we need to challenge politicians across the globe with their blatant racist rhetoric towards Muslims, migrants and refugees. Muslims are enduring intense discrimination in everyday life at the hands of the media and government policy. And it's our duty as Muslims to understand the political situation and understand the issues facing the Muslim community, not just religious issues in terms of theology, but to understand and speak out against Islamophobia and to get actively involved in campaigning to ensure a better, humane and peaceful world for future generations to come. Muslim women face discrimination on account of their gender, their ethnicity and their religion. As the most disadvantaged members of the most socially and economically deprived communities in Britain, Muslim women suffer astronomical levels of unemployment and economic inactivity. Muslim women suffer on account of their gender, ethnicity and religion, and it was the latter that poses the most barriers. Muslims face discrimination in many areas of public life, but women are held back further because they are seen by the right wing as passive, uninformed and uninterested in the world beyond their doorstep. Muslim women, especially those wearing Islamic dress, represent what is considered to these racist Islamophobes as a backward faith which disrupts Western ways of life. Now, large numbers of Muslim women, on a positive note in Britain, have argued that it is the intersecting effects of Islamophobia, including public stereotyping and male-dominated interpretations of Islam from within Muslim communities or assumptions made by non-Muslims which constrain them. Now, for some time now though, Muslim women have been fighting back, particularly in the years following 9/11. Muslim communities have come under heavy surveillance, and women have had to play different family roles, as the sisters have spoken about earlier. Wives, mothers, sisters that are here today, maybe, I don't know if there are wives here or mothers or sisters that are here today of brothers who are allegedly charged or imprisoned for alleged terrorist activity, have undertaken traditional male responsibilities. Others have been actually subjected to surveillance themselves. Where Muslim women have become rapidly politicized and active in public arenas. They are involved in campaigning to counter Islamophobia and also the patriarchal attitudes in their ethnic and religious communities. Muslim women have also become active in street politics. If we look at the 2000s, we had young Muslim sisters, mothers, daughters, out, demonstrating and protesting against the unjust wars, maybe for Stop the War or for Palestine, and also getting active in the refugee crisis, travelling to Calais, to Greece, to Macedonia, all across Europe to help our brothers and sisters in crisis. So Muslim women are working hard to increase their presence in public arenas and to break down stereotypes. That said, it is recognised that too many Muslims still remain on the margins of society and the economy. Muslim women are today at the forefront of attacks, Islamophobic attacks today, especially with the comments, Boris Johnson, with the letterbox commenting on Muslim. The first Muslim woman that I heard of was in Bristol, wearing the niqab, and a group of lads came up to her and tried to post a letter in her niqab and started pushing her around in front of her children. I mean, this is the type of unprecedented hate that has been targeted towards Muslim women, and comments like these are being, on the mainstream media normalised. Now, Steve Bannon, Trump's right-hand man, recent moves to fund and promote the far-right movements across Europe signifies the extent to which the international racist right are now organising. The size of the fascist demonstrations in London have been in their tens of thousands, and there was also an attack on a socialist bookshop, which shows and indicates that those that wish to spread hatred and division are growing bolder and increasingly more violent. Racism, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism are at the heart of their agenda. And with Boris Johnson's comments on the veil, shows that this has become mainstream political discourse. Now, so it's important to start mobilising and call on those who oppose racism and fascism and to work together in every workplace, college and community to drive back fascists and racists and support the Stand Up to Racism have called a demo, because it looks like after Tommy Robinson's court case, which is in September sometime, so maybe in November the fascists are going to call a big demonstration. This is going to be a massive demonstration in London most likely. So a mass national unity demonstration against fascism and racism will be on the 17th of November this year. So we need the biggest counter mobilisation against any far-right events. We should all unite and continue to fight the racism and Islamophobia, which will continue to devastate families like ours until it is brought to an end. Thank you very much.